I was lying on our bed, lost in erotic delight, when I heard the garage door activate. "Crap!" I blurted out. Jumping to my feet, I looked at the clock. 10:45. No, she couldn't go home yet. Oh, damn, 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 damn. I looked around our bedroom, pink petals, champagne, and wondered if my whole life was crumbling before my eyes. I'm an architect and have been living alone for about a year. I worked incredibly hard because I only had one client and my staff consisted of myself. My office was located in an abandoned gas station. I tried to work from home, but often took time off to spend time with Judy and the girls. We had identical twin girls who were born 6 years ago. They weren't planned, but we were delighted. We both wanted a big family, but something went wrong during the birth, and she couldn't get pregnant again. We tried some fertility treatments, but although the doctors were confident that some of the new techniques would be successful, we decided to put them on hold due to expense when I started my business. Judy stayed home with the girls until I opened my office. Money was tight and we needed additional salary. So, without complaint, she started working for an oil company as an executive assistant. Judy felt that her job had ideal hours for a working mother. From Monday to Thursday, she started at 9 and left at 3. Great hours, except for Friday, when she had to be at the airport by 7:10 a.m. to attend her boss's weekly meetings in Dallas. The airport was a quick 20-minute drive from our house, or 30 if you drove according to the rules. It had been a long day because they didn't leave Dallas until 6:25 and Judy rarely came into the house before 8:15. Then, almost 4 months ago, things got worse. Judy's boss got a promotion and the meetings started taking longer. After missing their plane several times and having to pay extra fees, they began simply scheduling the last flight, which didn't arrive in Midland until 9:55 a.m. It was usually around 11 when Judy came home. I wasn't happy about it, but since Judy didn't complain, I didn't say anything. Tonight was supposed to be full of pure fun and great sex, and now everything seems to be ruined. I looked at the clock again, 10:45. No, she couldn't be at home. I heard her car drive into the garage. Why did she come home now, at a time when she should have come if the plane had landed on time? But I knew the plane was not on time because, contrary to my habit, I checked the flight. I wanted everything to be perfectly timed for the moment she walked through the door. In a disoriented haze, I looked around the room again. I saw a bowl of pink petals that I planned to scatter on the bed. Champagne in an ice bucket that I rented from a liquor store. I remembered the caramelized apple pecan pie I bought at Heb. The frozen pie took an hour to make, and I just put it in the oven half an hour ago. I also bought Heb 95 vanilla ice cream to go with the pie. Hot apple pie with ice cream was Judy's favorite dessert, and it was one of the few dishes I knew how to cook. For a few precious seconds, I was in despair that she had ruined my surprise for her. It was an important day for us. Today, I found out that the first house I designed won a Frank Lloyd Wright Award. For an architect, it's like winning the Nobel Prize. I was hesitant about announcing the award at a family dinner, but decided I wanted to make the announcement to Judy in private, to make it the start of a romantic weekend before we started the very unsexy process of fertility treatment again. With the things that the bonus will bring, we will be able to afford the best. I hoped Judy would be delighted. So the girls were visiting my parents on one of their sightseeing RV trips. I told them I would have big news when we all went out to dinner on Sunday night. I heard the garage door activate to close, but Judy wasn't supposed to be here. My long-suppressed suspicions began a brutal attack on my head and heart. Even though my gut told me she was cheating, my heart continued to deny it. What do I really know? I asked myself. Her recent habit of going straight to the hot tub when she gets home on Friday started around the same time the late flight started. She didn't even change into a swimsuit, she just jumped into the water in her underwear. She called it mom relaxation time. I was now sure that this was a terrible play on words. Judy was always witty. Since the late flight started, we never made love on Fridays when she got home. She was too tired from work. But before the late flight started, when she would arrive just a couple of hours early, she would practically attack me on the way back from Dallas. If I hadn't been so pleasantly shocked, I would have asked her about it. Before those Fridays, I could count on one hand the times she initiated sex and still have my fingers and thumb left. But for more than a month, she barely had time to wait for the girls to fall asleep. After the late flight started, this did not happen again. She still responded to my attempts at making love, but never on Fridays. Of course, this might make sense after an 18-hour workday, but her chatter about work also changed. So is our social life. When she first started working, we would often go to small parties with her coworkers, and she would rave about how great her boss was. I remembered being jealous when I kept hearing about his incredible business skills, or when I listened to her talk about his resemblance to Sean Connery in his heyday, of course. Then, about 3 or 4 months ago, she stopped talking about him, and we stopped seeing her colleagues. I remembered being glad because my own crazy schedule left me too tired to enjoy the evenings. Now I was sure that she had changed for a more sinister reason. As the reasons continued to emerge, the most damning of them all surfaced. I couldn't remember the last time she told me she loved me, the last time she gave me one of her tender kisses on the cheek or a surprise hug. Judy has always been a demonstrative woman, but not anymore. At least not with me. I froze in mid-thought. I wanted to scream my denial. Judy, my Judy, the woman who taught me the difference between making love and sex, the only woman I had ever made love to, couldn't come in now, soiled by her lover's bed. The image threatened to overwhelm me. Then she called, "Matt, where are you? I'm so glad to be home." Her voice sounded so normal that her tone just didn't match the mental image I had created. I shook my head. It couldn't be. It wasn't my Judy. Maybe I was looking at the wrong flight. Or perhaps the plane somehow managed to catch up with time. In 3 steps, I was at the computer in our bedroom. I pressed the exit button and the screensaver disappeared. I pressed the refresh button. There, on the screen, was her flight number with a note that it would land only in half an hour. I looked again at our bed, rumpled from where I had been lying on it, and for a moment I wanted to run away. I wanted to go back to the land of denial, but I couldn't do that. The question was open, and I had to get an answer. As I walked down the stairs, I knew I hadn't said anything, but I could feel a guttural sound originating deep in my throat. When I stepped out onto the glass porch, Judy had already taken off her blouse and unbuttoned her pants. I came up behind her and hugged her tightly. "Matt, please, you know how tired I am when I get home. Let me relax until tomorrow." As I began to push my hand into her panties, she began to squirm in my arms. "No, Matt, maybe later." "No, Matt." She squirmed more. Turning with unexpected force, she broke free and screamed, "Damn it!" I said no. She stood there, breathing heavily from the effort and glaring at me. I moved towards her. My intentions were clear. Her eyes widened, and she said quietly, stopping me, "No, Matt, it's not like that. I won't let you find out that way." I don't think I realized what I was doing until that moment. Those 13 words left me in a state of shock, like a bull at the slaughterhouse. I was in the same medical shock as if she had shot me. I looked at her and felt nothing. I couldn't understand it. I knew my world had just been destroyed, but I didn't feel anything. I was unusually calm. I tried to feel something, anything, but there was nothing. In a voice so calm that I found it hard to believe it was my voice, I said, "You wouldn't have done this to us if you didn't love him. Have you ever loved me?" Her face became gentle. "I loved you. I didn't want this to happen. I didn't want this. I never thought it would be like this. I always will." I didn't want to hear anything else. I interrupted her. "Are you going to marry him?" There was a tense silence. I looked at her, silently demanding an answer. She bit her lower lip. This question was raised. He insisted on a solution. I was so confused, I just couldn't. I interrupted her again. "Please do me the favor of getting back to him. I just realized this whole sordid thing because your flight hasn't landed yet. I need time to think about it." Judy came up to me with a face full of sympathy, intending to hug me, and said, "Oh, Matt, I'm so sorry. I wish this had never started. Please let me explain to you. I am very sorry that you found out about it in this way." I retreated, feeling that I could be made of the most fragile crystal, knowing that at the slightest touch from her, I would shatter irrevocably. I took another step back, holding out my hand to stop her. "Please, just take what you need and go. Mom and Dad have taken the girls on one of their trips. They won't be available until Sunday evening. We'll talk Sunday afternoon. I don't want to see or hear from you until then." I was shaking. In the far corner of my mind, part of me wondered whether it was from anger, fear, or a heart attack. She looked at me, her eyes pleading, and opened her mouth to speak, but I interrupted her harshly. "No." Her face flashed with fear, she sighed and walked into our bedroom. The insensitivity returned. I walked into the living room, sank heavily into a chair, and wondered how long this gray void in my mind would last. I don't know how long it took before she came back. Her expression was thoughtful, but I also saw something I had noticed when she was told she would never be able to have children again. "Matt, I saw what you had planned. I didn't want to ruin it. If you want." These words hit me like thunder. Bitch, she offered me sex out of pity, sex after a lover. I started to get up from the chair. She saw my face, sobbed, and ran away. She must have been sitting in the car for a while because several minutes passed before I heard the garage door open and then close. As soon as I heard the garage door close, I went limp in my seat, and the colorless emptiness overwhelmed me again. I don't know how long I sat there. My mind was completely blank before I fell asleep. I woke up furious from a vivid dream of Judy making love to her boss. This was not wild, illicit sex, but tender love. Every part of my body groaned as I rose from the chair, every joint screamed in pain, but I also burned with anger that I had never felt. I stomped back to our bedroom. Our bedroom, there was no longer us, there could be no ours. In the red haze, I grabbed a bottle of champagne from the cooler and smashed everything that could be broken, until I stood over the delicate Dresden figure of a young woman wearing 100 full skirts, covered with a pale blue ball gown and holding a fauna. This was Judy's only inheritance from her grandmother. As much as I wanted to break this 6-inch porcelain doll, I just couldn't. I looked around the room. I destroyed it, and it didn't make me feel any better. I looked at the bottle of champagne in my hand and was surprised that it didn't break. Without thinking, I tore off the wrapper, untied the cork, and pulled it out with a loud pop. The champagne splashed out like in a movie. I have never been a wine connoisseur, but as a child, I once read a biography of the Rothschild family. I promised myself that if I ever made it, I would celebrate with one of the most expensive champagnes in the world, Chateau Lafite Rothschild Poilac. I drank straight from the heavy glass bottle and swore I would never touch that drink again. It tastes like crap. It didn't put me to sleep, but fatigue took over and I fell asleep again. I didn't have any dreams, thank God. I woke up a few hours later when the first rays of light penetrated the window. Whatever anger I had was gone, and my mind fell back into insensitivity. I was dead inside. I tried to create anger, then sadness, but I felt nothing. My marriage was over, I knew it, but my mind refused to accept reality. Instead, he looked to the past for answers. Judy and I met while I was attending the University of Texas. She attended Southwestern University in Georgetown and played soccer for their Division Roman III team. I played club soccer at UT and put together a team to compete in a 7-on-7 tournament that was held on Sue's Fields. Judy came over to watch and caught my attention. I made a complete fool of myself trying to stand out. We didn't even qualify for the tournament that we won the year before and would win the year later. Judy, bless her heart, pretended not to notice. From that day on, we were inseparable. Driving 26.8 miles round trip on I-35, we used enough gas to fill strategic reserves, but who cares? Judy was a virgin when we met. I had one girlfriend in high school who I slept with 73 times before we broke up. Yes, I did, and I couldn't imagine how someone could not consider something so important. I knew Judy and I were meant for each other when I lost count of how many times we made love, not sex, but love, on our first weekend together. It was in a nice room at the Four Seasons Hotel near the airport after the Tri-Delta Spring Ball on Friday night. It's funny, we didn't make love that night. When we started to undress, Judy got scared. She said she couldn't without a permanent commitment. While naked, I got down on one knee and asked Judy to marry me. She, wearing only a bra and panties, clutching a sheet to cover herself, agreed, but still wanted a ring. I spent the night on the floor. We were at the Americas Diamond store near Highland Mall as soon as their doors opened, and I bought a ring that I thought she would always be proud to wear. Back in our room, we exchanged personal vows before God as I placed the ring on her finger. We got married during the Christmas holidays. We lived in Round Rock and both graduated within a year. Apart from those first 2 times, I can't remember a single time when I wasn't sure Judy enjoyed sex as much as I did. Remembering the last few times we made love, I was sure that she was more than satisfied. And I wasn't inattentive. Even with all the extra hours I worked, she never said a word about being lonely or needing more of my time. You've heard the expression, I worshiped the ground she walked on. In my case, this was true. When we built this house, I went to Georgetown and took a piece of turf from their football field. It was from the very place where I first saw her. I bought enough of the same type of sod to seed our yard, but this little piece was the first thing I planted. No, our sex life was a dream. I pursed my lips. I couldn't find answers in our past. As I brewed myself a cup of Twining's black Chinese tea, I again tried to evoke some feeling, even pain. I still didn't feel anything. I could feign false emotions, but real feelings were simply inaccessible to me. I think my subconscious understood that I couldn't handle the pain right now, and I didn't have the energy for the rage I was feeling earlier. Besides, I had to be unemotional if I was going to salvage anything from this rotten quagmire Judy had plunged me into. I knew our marriage was over as soon as I realized she was cheating. When I destroyed the bedroom last night, I knew I wanted to hurt her, to punish her. I was surprised this morning to find that I had cut up everything in her closet. I cut all her underwear and tore everything else in her closet. I didn't even realize I took my fillet knife from the fishing box until I saw it on the floor next to the bed. This realization reminded me of a childhood friend, and it scared me. Desperate not to get over this horrible memory, I began to revisit everything I knew about Judy's infidelity. First, she said she was thinking about marrying him. I wondered why the thought didn't hurt me. My mind avoided even the image of Judy dressed in the arms of this man, but the thought of her marrying him did not seem unpleasant to me. I explored this idea with the same unnatural detachment. I felt to my core that Judy still loved me. I was sure that if I pressed, I could win her back. I knew all her levers, and I had the advantage of children and her own moral code. I knew how much guilt she must feel, and if I was honest, how easily Judy could be manipulated. Then I thought about the man who slept with her. I knew a lot about her boss, James Capote. In his early 40s, he had been divorced from his second wife for more than 5 years and had 2 children, a boy who was about to finish school at Midland Lee and a daughter 2 years younger. According to Judy, he always tried to increase the time spent with them, but he was only allowed to see them every weekend and on alternating holidays. He couldn't even see them in the summer. I met him many times shortly after Judy started working, but I haven't for the last 3 or 4 months. I didn't like him from the very beginning. He had wandering eyes. Although I could understand his interest in Judy, I had a hard time believing that Judy could fall in love with him. These thoughts pushed me to go down the what if or what did I do wrong paths. Instead, I sat down at my computer and began researching divorce laws in Texas. I learned that a divorce in Texas can be finalized within 60 days of filing. The verdict must be read out in open court, but the parties are not even required to be present unless the divorce is contested. The sooner it was over, the better, I thought. There were forms that could be printed for a fee, which I gladly paid. I spent several hours thinking about what I wanted from the settlement and how I could get Judy to agree to my terms. Finally, I decided I wanted what was best for my girls. I thought about canceling our credit cards, emptying our bank accounts, but I decided that as much as I hated Judy now, I didn't think she would try to steal from me or our girls. I wanted to keep the house so the girls wouldn't have to move. We pledged every penny of our capital to help me start the business, which amounted to about $10,000. With the reward, I will be able to borrow the necessary amount to buy out Judy's share. With the premium, my business would be worth a fortune. I didn't want her, or more importantly, that creep Capote to have any claim on it. This was another reason to do everything quickly. The awards won't be announced until the big banquet 3 months later. The winners are not announced publicly until this point, but it's not like the Oscars. Sometimes the winners know in advance. Held in New York, I was given a hint since I wouldn't normally plan to attend. Heck, if I didn't win the award, I wouldn't even be able to get a ticket. Yes, that was another great reason to get things sorted out quickly, which meant I had to propose a fair division if I wanted it done quickly. I was torn between wanting to get rid of everything that reminded me of our life together and wanting to make as few changes as possible for the girls. I decided that I would get an appraiser to come and appraise everything we had, including what I destroyed. I will offer to buy a replacement in addition to her half of our property. We will take turns choosing what we want until someone reaches half of the total cost. I went through the rest of the details of our breakup, taking notes and adding specific items to the forms I purchased. By evening, I had a plan that I could live with, which Judy gladly accepted. I realized that I hadn't eaten anything all day, and the thought of eating made me sick. However, if I'm going to achieve my goals, I'm going to need my strength. Not trusting my culinary skills, I wondered what food would be best for our life together. I ordered a pizza. While I was eating, my thoughts went back to what I could do to hurt Judy, hurt her. I knew that once I got past the denial stage, the emotional pain would become unbearable. But how could I make her feel such pain? Leaving me won't hurt her, unlike me. I mean, of course there would be regrets, but she left me for someone. I would be alone. I couldn't do anything to break her heart. And yet, no matter how much I denied it, no matter how unacceptable what she did was, I didn't think I could stop loving her. After much internal debate and reflection, I realized that leaving her or sending her away was not my choice. She made this choice when she accepted Capote into her body. I wouldn't want to live with a wife like that, period. If it wasn't my choice whether she stayed or went, what was the worst I could hope for? Then the perfect solution came to me. I still had to ask myself if I could pull it off. Judy always complied with my wishes. What used to drive me crazy was that I could never get her to tell me things like where she wanted to go for dinner. She might later be angry about my choice, but she refused to give me her opinion until I made an issue out of it. Can I use this to push her towards what I want her to do? Ultimately, it will be her choice. However, I knew I had a good chance. I knew her, maybe not as well as I should have, but I knew the pressure she responded to, and I knew I could apply a lot of pressure. Late at night, I plotted and plotted. This will require a very delicate approach. Judy called a little after 8. I took a few deep breaths before answering. Judy, you made your choice. Even if you didn't want it, you made a choice for both of us. The question now is how this will affect girls. You know, divorce is always hard for children. The question is, do you want war, or will we work to make their lives easier? Matt, please let me talk. I'm sorry I hurt you. I love you. I don't want you to hate me. I never expected it to go this far, but I almost fainted when I heard that word, love, Judy. Every time I hear your voice, I hate you and what you have done even more. Do you understand the impact this sad romance will have on the twins? We try to instill values and moral principles in them. How do you explain that you have given up the most solemn vows that a person can make for the sake of entertaining sex? Judy sobbed. It wasn't like that. Oh, really? Even after several months, you still haven't decided to marry him. How will this sound to girls? I stopped and let the silence linger. I then continued, sorry, I managed to contact my parents and tell them to keep the girls a little later. If you agree, I'll have them brought here at 5, and we can tell them the news together. Otherwise, I'll tell them 1. I'll be nice to you while we talk to the girls, but this is the last time I want to hear your voice until we get divorced. I try really hard not to say what I want to say. You will always say that you will be the mother of my children, and we will have to talk about them. Just don't push me right now. Matt, I really didn't mean to offend you. Yes, I know that's what happened. Let's do this as quickly as possible. I'll pay your rent. I just hope you don't plan on living with your asshole until you get married. I stopped and let my heart rate slow. I would like to hide as much of this dirty nonsense from them as possible. It's your business. You decide for yourself. Can I come and talk now? No. Please, Matt, I don't want it to be like this. I interrupted her. In my strongest voice, I said, "Our marriage was over the second you opened your legs for him." I sighed dramatically. "Whatever your reasons, you killed him, so let's just bury him as decently as possible." I paused for emphasis, then said in a wistful tone, "I really hope you marry him. Not just for girls, I think it will make life easier for me too. I don't want to think that you ruined our marriage." Then I let the silence grow. Finally, Judy fell and said, "Okay, Matt, if that's what you want, I'll do it your way. If hell exists, then I've been there." The detachment remained. Otherwise, I think I would have died from the pain that I saw in my little girls when Judy began the conversation. "You should know that your daddy and I love you very much, but sometimes adults make mistakes." For several minutes, she continued to use euphemisms that the girls did not understand. Finally, I said as softly as possible, "Your mother fell in love with another man and now wants to marry him. I said it's okay, so we'll have to get a divorce." As soon as those words left my mouth, I knew that I would have done anything not to say them. An Omar Khayyam poem I had learned in high school ricocheted through my mind, and I had to hold back tears. Moving finger writes and having written, "Let's go further. Neither all your piety nor your intelligence." I'll lure him back to cancel half the line. "And all your tears don't wash away a word about it." Nothing has changed in the 10 centuries since he wrote it. My entire universe consisted of their two precious faces. I couldn't even see the rest of their bodies, just two small masks of pain. I was not much older than them when the father of a friend on my football team killed his mother and then committed suicide in their living room. His little sister and my friend were hiding in their room while their parents yelled at each other. The only thing he remembered hearing before the shots was his father's cry, "They'd rather have dead parents than this." A terrible custody battle was won between his grandparents and his mom's parents, who lived in another state. I never saw him again, but at that moment I knew exactly how his father felt. It took all my willpower not to pull out the gun and kill Judy. I've never hated anyone so much in my life. I thought so, but until I saw what it did to my daughters, I had no idea what real hatred was. I know other things were said. The girls asked questions and Judy must have answered them. I didn't hear a sound. All I knew was that I was holding two small treasures in my hands. Finally, the question arose, "But Mom, why don't you love Dad anymore?" I blinked and color returned to the world. I saw a creature. It could not be human. No person could bear the pain written on a body like Judy's. His face was a confused distortion of pain, trying to radiate love for my daughters. "Mommy still loves Daddy. She will always love Daddy." I chimed in, "You won't understand this until you're older, but Mom had to choose, and she chose him. Sometimes people love more than one person, but you can only marry one. Capote, but we'll all try to do it as gently as possible. You won't understand this until you're older, but sometimes people love more than one person, and you can only be married to one. Mom should be Mr. Keeks Capote, Capote's wife, but we'll all try to make it easier for you. Mr. Capote will love you very much, but I will always be your father. You will simply make the other person love you like a mother does." Carrie, always the more demonstrative of the twins, broke away from my embrace, rushed towards her mother, and began hitting her as hard as she could. After a few seconds, Lori followed her sister's lead, but picked up a long brass kaleidoscope from the coffee table. Her first blow damaged Judy's forehead above her left eye. I grabbed Lori, but didn't try to help Judy. Instead, I coldly said, "You've upset the girls. I think you should leave." I'll let the captain know when you can pick up your things." Judy stood up and went to the kitchen to get ice and paper towels. Returning a few minutes later, with the girls hugging me and crying, Judy started to open her mouth, but I interrupted her. "You'll stay with the captain, won't you? Or do you want girls to call you only on your mobile?" After removing her makeup, her eyes began to swell, but her voice remained calm as she replied, "That's where I've been for the last 2 nights. I haven't said anything yet. I was hoping we could discuss this as a family." I interrupted her again. "Girls, please go to your room. Mom and I need to talk alone." As soon as they left, I said, "As much as I respect and love the captain, he is your father, and I think you need to tell him this in person. Besides, you probably want to start planning your wedding." I took a deep breath. "I have a package of legal documents that I have prepared. I want you to take them with you. Here is my plan for dividing our property and settling our affairs. Sorry, poor choice of words. I am ready to agree to almost anything except custody of the girls and the use of my last name. I will back down on this issue. If you marry Capote as soon as it's final, it will help hide what happened from the girls. But anyway, I want this to be completed as soon as possible, that is, within 60 days from Monday. I got a little out of control a minute ago, but if you agree, we can meet with our lawyer in the morning and work out an agreement. I'm sure your boss will give you the day off, and I want the paperwork to be filed. If we do this, I promise to do everything I can to help you save your relationship with the girls. I will never tell them, the captain or anyone else, that you are a lying swindler who has destroyed our happy home." Judy looked at me as if she wanted to object, but finally her tears began to flow. Without saying a word, she turned around and quietly left the house. When I finally put the girls to bed, I returned to my chair. With my head in my hands, I whispered, "Captain, damn it, this will kill him. I'm very sorry that this happened to him. He doesn't deserve it." Judy's father retired as an admiral, although he never served in that rank and refused to use the rank. His last command was one of the supercarriers. A landing error during a rookie's second pilot on the ship left him paralyzed from the waist down. Although I never considered him disabled, he lived in a wheelchair and urinated through a tube. Judy, a very late first child, had been conceived shortly before the accident. Judy's mother died of cancer when Judy was in high school, and the captain raised her alone. I have never met a more worthy person. He was like a father to me. No, it's not fair. My father was a good dad. He just worked as a petroleum engineer and geologist all his life. He was often away from home, and although he tried, we were never close. It was different with the captain. I always said I would never leave Judy unless the captain left her too. He was the first person I admire who treated me like a man and not like a child. When we got married, Judy and I still had almost a year and a half of school left. Even though I knew I was too young for marriage, the captain brought out the best in me. Trapped in a wheelchair, he was still the scariest person I had ever met, and I could probably talk for hours about how I felt about him and his impact on my life. I took a deep breath, looked at my watch, and tried to convince myself that it was too late to call him. He answered the second call. "Son, first of all, I want to say that I am on your side. She is my daughter and I love her, but I can't believe she would do such a stupid thing. I know she's confused, but..." We talked for a long time. He spoke of problems he encountered in the Navy with wives cheating while their husbands were away for 6 months or even a year. He never directly said that some of them lived happily ever after, but I knew where he was going with this. As much as I wanted to, I respected him too much to interrupt him. Finally, he got to the point. "I've read your paperwork. Any chance that if I beat the crap out of this stupid bitch, you'll consider giving her another chance?" I couldn't help but smile at the captain's hyperbole. He and I have discussed the issue of spanking our girls many times. We both thought that gently spanking a small child was more effective than trying to reason with an immature brain, but neither of us was very good at it. I felt cold in my chest and was worried that I might have heart problems. "No, sir. Captain, I'm sorry, but this is not a one-time mistake. I never understood how a man could kill his wife, but I do now. I'll spend the rest of my life working on forgiving her, but even if I can, I still can't live with her. I sighed. I didn't want to hear those words, especially from my own lips, but I couldn't be ambiguous with the captain. Besides, sir, even if I could, we've talked and she loves him. I couldn't live with it, not even for the sake of the girls. The captain's voice became very soft. Son, she is very confused now, if you give her a little time. She said they were talking about marriage. I didn't even know what was going on, and they were already talking about marriage. I know I worked hard, but I just can't forgive it. I want her to get married. For that bastard's sake, and we'll both live with it. I said I wouldn't complain about her. Captain, our marriage is over. But I really think it's better if the girls don't grow up, thinking that their mother ruined our marriage for casual pleasures. There was a long pause. She didn't tell me about this. Son, are you sure you want to do this? Do you want to push her towards this marriage? I said as firmly as I could, Judy and I will always be connected to each other through girls. Now I have absolutely no respect for her. If she gets married, she will at least try to do something decent. Who knows? Maybe in a few years we'll both be able to look at it differently. The captain interrupted. If she marries him, it will be bad, and this is a convention. It will revive our relationship, yours and mine. You will always be the girl's grandfather, and I will always be their father. I'll let you decide how comfortable you feel, but I will never give up on what you and I have. I heard the captain sigh. Then he said, This is tough, but we will play by your rules. It's her own fault. I guess we'll just have to see how much she likes it. But you know, I'm thinking about you, and you know, I don't think two wrongs can make one right. I don't know how many times I've heard variations of the expression, hard heart. As we talked, I felt my heart harden. I didn't hear the voice in my head, but I knew I was crossing a line that would turn my heart into hardened steel. I know, sir, but I have no choice. I couldn't take it back and look myself in the eye in the mirror. As much as I love Judy, I won't be a wimp. Even if I was ready, what kind of example would she set for my girls? The sooner we formalize this, the better. The sooner the future will sort itself out. If I didn't know the captain, I would think I heard tears in his voice. Son, I'll try to convince her to accept your proposal, so that it will be decided tomorrow. Just promise me that you and I can keep talking, and that you won't leave me no matter how bad things get. Please promise me this. His voice trembled. My own voice was a little hoarse when I said, You have my word, sir. There was a very heavy silence, and I heard the captain say something like goodbye. I didn't trust my voice even on that. I knew his pain was worse than mine. He loved us both. I hung up, and although I tried, I couldn't cry. I didn't like who I had become, and I hated Judy for making me this way. During 3 months, I sat alone at a table in the back of a huge auditorium. As I walked up to collect my prize, they announced that I was the youngest person to ever receive this award. At 28, I was 7 years younger than the previous youngest laureate. I stood up, made my acceptance speech, and tried not to show too much bitterness. However, it was impossible not to remember the days after I learned that I was the winner. The captain came to the lawyer's office that Monday morning, and every time Judy began to object to one of the terms, he forced her to agree to a good compromise. We finished before noon, and the papers were filed before the court closed. 61 days later, the judge read the decree in open court, and we were divorced. A week after that, Judy became Mrs. King James Capote. It hurt, and the girls cried the entire week. They were on their honeymoon. On the flight home, I realized for the first time what I had lost. I was the most sought-after architect on the planet. Clients begged me to accept their advances. And yet here I am, alone on the plane. I had girls, my parents, but, although I killed the mammoth, I did not have a companion to bring the prize. When I returned home, my answering machine was full of calls from potential clients. The only call I answered was from the captain. He said all the right things to lift my spirits, to let me know how proud he was of me. Then, using a soft voice, he asked, "When did you find out about this?" When I told him, he swore as only a former sailor can. When he calmed down, he said, "This sucks. This really sucks." Then, in a quieter tone, he added, "I know what it's like when life hits you in the balls. Words won't help, but I'm here for you." He was silent for a long time, then added, "Son, I can't make it get better, but if you want to go unwind, I'll either look after the girls or I'll go with you and pay for everything." "Thank you, Captain, if you can avoid talking about her. I can't think of a better companion for tonight." I did go with the captain, but I think it was the most depressing week of my life. 2 years after the divorce, I was in New York again for a professional triumph. This banquet increased my number of Frank Lloyd Wright Awards to 4. I won for the house last year and won for the house again this year, completing an unprecedented hat trick. My fourth prize was for a commercial building I designed for the city of Midland. The architecture world went crazy over it. I also became the first person to win in 2 different categories in the same year in the history of the award. So why was I sitting at the table without a single friend? Alone among complete strangers? Why was I lonelier than I had ever been in my life? Why was I lonely? Not because people didn't try to contact me. I had to get an unregistered home phone number because potential clients from all over the world were calling me at all hours of the day. I was away more than I wanted to be, but at least when I was home, I was home. I built an office extension to my house and only went to the office downtown under serious threats. When I was at home, I never worked when the girls weren't studying. With the exception of the month the girls were at Judy's, our summer was one long journey. Of course, part of this time was spent visiting potential construction sites, but the girls loved seeing where my next project might be built. Besides, we spent most of our time exploring the surrounding area. I never wanted my design to be out of sync with the local environment. Why was I lonely? Not for lack of attention from women. I didn't go on many dates, but women from all over the world called me asking if I could meet them. It seems the story of my broken heart at the moment of my greatest triumph was picked up nationally, and there were many women with big hearts who wanted to help heal it. It probably didn't hurt that I was making money faster than the mint could print it. Unfortunately, I didn't love myself, not even a little. I couldn't love, let alone fall in love with, someone else until I loved myself. I wasn't chaste. I could have as much sex as I wanted. I just didn't find anyone to make love to, or more accurately, to whom I could make love. I couldn't overcome my problems. I just couldn't respect a woman who would want someone like me. Instead of blaming myself, I tried to blame it on trust. I told myself I just couldn't trust, and until I got to that point, I wouldn't bring anyone home for the twins to get attached to. Honestly, divorce sucks. As a supposed adult, I didn't find it very funny, but as a parent, it broke my heart to see what it was doing to my beautiful girls. They never spoke a word about their mother, but constantly, casually mentioned their stepfather and his children. They never mentioned anything other than verbal fights with their half-siblings, but I knew it must be difficult for them. I tortured myself thinking about how hostile this home environment could be for them. I was on an overnight flight from New York and was sitting in my seat, trying to recover from my trip, when the phone rang. The captain was at a loss for words. "Son, that son of a bitch sent her to the hospital this time. He started beating her right after you fired him, and now he sent her to the hospital. You have to get her out of there before he kills her. Even if you don't do this for Judy, think about the twins. They shouldn't see their mother being used as a punching bag." I felt a pang of panic. Where are the girls? Calm down, they're fine. They spent the night with their friend Laura, and I called your parents to pick them up. Your parents followed them like wildfire, and they went on one of their trips. They will bring them to see you on Sunday evening. I sighed with relief. Why don't you come and talk about it? This is the first time I've heard that he beats her. Why does she allow this? You know why, don't pretend with me. No, we did everything we could to push her into this marriage. If she didn't know at the time that you wanted her to feel the same as you, it didn't take long for her to understand. She feels so guilty about what she did that she would agree to anything, even his beatings. I clenched my teeth. I could deceive myself, but I could not deceive the captain. I didn't think it would go this far. You knew he was a bastard. What did you think he would do when he found out you fired him and pressed charges of sexual harassment? I swallowed hard. I thought that if I never thought about hitting a woman, then he wouldn't either. Come over, Captain, and we'll sort it out, I promise. There was a long pause, and then the captain's voice became decisive. This shit needs to stop. No one can treat my girl like that. Judy made me promise not to do anything rash last time. Maybe I'm chained to this chair, but this shit needs to stop. Of course. Captain, I'm really sorry. For your sake. I really didn't think it would come to this. I'll be there in about an hour and a half. I'm going to stop by the hospital to try and convince Judy. Damn it, damn it. He hung up, and I felt a chill run down my spine. This was not a curse, but a sincere curse. The captain was in his 60s and not in the best of health, but he had never been one to stand by while an innocent was attacked. While I waited, I thought about my final act of revenge. When the divorce was finalized, I spent days, weeks, trying to figure out a way to get back at Capote. I just couldn't think of anything that wouldn't hurt me more than it would hurt him. I was in good shape, but even though he was almost 20 years older, he was still close to his weight when he played quarterback at Texas Tech University. I could throw a surprise punch, but even if he didn't press charges, I wasn't sure I could beat him in a fight unless I was going to spend years doing something like karate, like I had the time for that. I researched Texas law and could not file a claim for alienation of affection. Judy could have filed a sexual harassment claim, but I couldn't. For more than a year and a half, my lack of revenge was like a big splinter that I couldn't pull out. Then fate gave me a gift. Company CEO Capote accidentally ran into me at a charity event. For God's sake, this event was in Midland, and he lived in New York. Somehow he learned in advance about my award for this year's public building and wanted me to design a large office for them in Midland. I made an appointment and showed him a computer image of a project I had been working on for years. Then I told him the truth. If it were any other company in the world, I would happily take the opportunity to realize the dream I've been working towards since I was a child, but no amount of money could buy that for his company. Of course, in such a large company, he had never heard of Capote, much less my ex-wife. When I insisted that I would not work for a company that tolerated such behavior, he did not take it well. A few weeks later, Capote was fired for sexual harassment. The CEO called me to thank me. He said Capote had been accused of harassment half a dozen times in the 15 years he'd worked for them. He said that he reviewed 2 recent cases, found a new one, and established grounds for his dismissal. We signed the contract a week later. Like I said, professionally I was on top of the world, but with the captain's call, I was afraid that my personal life would hit a new low. When the captain arrived, more than an hour late, he simply moved into the house and gave no explanation for the delay. Without waiting for me to offer him coffee or anything, he began. Jesus, son, she's in terrible shape. She'll be in the hospital for at least a week. Heck, they only kept me in for 3 days after a 6-artery bypass. He was trembling, and I could not help but notice that the trembling stopped at the exact point where he was paralyzed. This added to the tragedy. He was silent for about 90 seconds, and was still not under control when he continued, I can't let this happen. I supported everything you did to her because I thought she deserved it. But she doesn't deserve it, and I have to put an end to this. How can I stop this, Captain? She is not my wife. I have no power to do anything. All she has to do is divorce him or sue him. The captain's voice carried a commanding authority that I had never seen before. I suddenly understood how his junior officers felt when they made mistakes on his aircraft carrier. Don't try to lie to me. I was there, I helped you. Damn, you knew what you were doing, and you did it. You wanted her to know what it was like to have someone you loved cheat on you and make sure she felt it. I love you, but you're as cold-blooded a bastard as anyone I've ever met. You would have made a good fighter pilot. You attacked with a plan, but without emotion. and did it. But for God's sake, tell me you didn't want this to happen." I was a split second away from heated denial, but the look in his eyes froze my words. I lowered my head. "Yes, Captain, I knew what I was doing. I knew that any man who cheated like him would never stop cheating. Once a cheater, always a cheater." I looked up and met his eyes. They weren't harsh or even angry as I expected, but they showed a hint of what I took to be sympathy. I swallowed hard and continued. "I didn't think she would stay with him. Midland is a small town in some ways. I made sure she knew he was cheating and thought she would divorce him." He interrupted me. "Were you going to take her back?" "No, Captain, I loved Judy, but I couldn't live with a man who didn't love me or chose someone else. I could forgive her cheating, but not that she fell in love with someone else. I know that I pushed all her buttons to get her to marry him. I used the girls, though I was using you and her own morals to push her into a marriage that I was sure wouldn't last 6 months. I wanted to hurt her. But I stopped. I wanted to say that I didn't want her to get hurt like that, but I wasn't sure I meant it. I was sorry for the captain's sake, but damn, she made her choice, and I was more than glad that the choice was one of thorns. The captain looked me in the eyes. I tried to convince her to leave when I saw her in the hospital, but she didn't listen. The only person who can make her leave is you. You sentenced her to this. Only you can change the sentence. Isn't it time to show her some mercy?" The captain was silent for a while. "Honestly, this is not what I expected. I was hoping that after she realized her mistake, repented and crawled on her knees, you would take her back. I have never seen someone so devoted as you were to her. I still think that if she leaves him, you will take her back. But I don't understand why you think she stopped loving you." I asked her that night, and she said, "I loved you, not I love you." She used the past tense, and that's when I realized there was no hope. It was a weak answer to his question, but it was the best I could offer. The captain exploded. "That's it? All you had? Time for one word." The captain regained control of himself and looked at me seriously. "No, no, you knew better. It's time you found out what it did to her," he screamed, then fell silent. After a few seconds, seeming to have regained his composure, he made one of those sharp turns that reminded me of a motorcyclist doing a stunt and headed towards my front door. "Wait here, I need to get something from the car." Then he turned around again and, using that commanding voice that I had not heard before, ordered, "No, you do it. On the passenger seat of my car, you will find a brown paper bag with some books. Bring it here." I don't usually respond well to orders, but I did it. When I offered him the package, he said to put it on the table. "Did you know that Judy kept a diary?" When I shook my head, he continued, "I didn't know either, but she was leading. When I arrived at the hospital, I tried to persuade her to leave him, but she didn't listen. When I calmed down a little, I asked what reason he gave for this beating, and she said that he had just bought a new diary and saw her old ones. He demanded that she give them to him, and she refused. A blind person would have noticed that my girl is afraid of what he will do if he finds them. When I offered to take them for safekeeping, she happily agreed. She made me promise not to read them before telling me where they were hidden. I also promised that I would not let the man, whom I took with me, to read them." He looked at his chair. "I couldn't get to her hiding place. She hid them in the attic under insulation, so I took a friend. I asked her to write me a note giving me permission to take them. I took my friend's son, a policeman, and we went there. He was in uniform, and Capote gave us no resistance. The house was in terrible shape. Kyle climbed into the attic, and when I came down, I took her very last diary. She cut out the center of the cookbook. Capote looked at us the whole time, but that's all that cowardly bastard did. I haven't read them, and I know Kyle hasn't either. I didn't promise I wouldn't give them to you, and you didn't promise you wouldn't read them." He stopped and gave me one of those penetrating looks again. "Listen, son, and I couldn't love you more if you were my own son. Judy has many faults, but she is not a liar." He stopped again, and my face probably gave away my thoughts because he continued, "Not telling you about cheating is kind of a lie, but we both know that if you had asked her directly, she would have told the truth." No less, these diaries are her conversations with herself. It will be the direct, unvarnished truth. I want you to read them. We both know what it was. Not because she fell in love with that idiot. He paused and rubbed his chin. I can't force you to forgive her, but they say that understanding is forgiveness. Maybe if you learn more. Well, if you can't forgive, maybe. For God's sake, show her mercy. Please. The captain left, and I sat looking at the package with the diaries, but my thoughts were not about them. My thoughts were still on the captain's last words. He said mercy twice. He said Judy was at my mercy. I didn't like the idea, but I wasn't sure I understood the concept. I went to my computer and opened the American Heritage Dictionary to check the definition of the word mercy. There were 4 meanings, starting with the most common. 1. Compassionate attitude, especially towards those under your authority, mercy. 2. Tendency to be kind and forgiving, a heart full of mercy. 3. Something to be grateful for, blessing. It was mercy that no one was hurt. 4. Relief of suffering, help. Distributing food to the homeless was an act of mercy. I closed the dictionary in irritation and tried to justify what I had done to Judy. I just gave her what she wanted. I just helped her make the moral choice to marry him. But I couldn't even complete that thought. Yes, it was her choice, and she was responsible, but I pushed her. Moreover, I knew that I had power over her. Even during the divorce process, I knew that she wanted to do whatever it took to make up for the pain she caused me, and I unabashedly exploited that. I definitely wasn't inclined to be kind or forgiving. I thought about it. This was true, but who did I still want to punish? Judy or Capote? I ruined his career. No one will hire a man for a management position if he has a 15-year gap in his record. However, if he lists his last job, any audit will show that he was fired for repeated sexual harassment that led to legal settlements. Who will take such a risk? He was currently working at a convenience store, and he was lucky to have that job. That was quite a drop from a 6-figure salary. However, I realized that I still don't think the scores are even. I wanted him to be killed in a robbery. In a moment of epiphany, I realized that in my mind, the scores would never be evened as long as he had Judy. I may not have wanted her, but he sure as hell didn't deserve her, and that was before he started hitting her. I didn't think the 3rd definition of mercy applied in this case, but what about the 4th? Was I inclined to ease Judy's pain? I didn't think so, but this realization didn't make me think too highly of myself. It actually made me feel a little ashamed. I tried to remember something about mercy and remembered the phrase, mercy should not be forced. I had no idea what that meant or where it came from, so I Googled it. Here's what I found. Origin. From Shakespeare's The Merchant of Venice. Portia, mercy should not be forced. It drips like soft rain from heaven. To the place below it, it is doubly blessed. It blesses the one who gives and the one who receives. It is powerful in the mighty. It becomes better on the throne of a monarch than his crown. It is an attribute of God himself. An earthly power is then most similar to God's. When mercy softens justice, it didn't make me feel any better. I was still tired. It was only a little after noon, but according to my internal clock, it was the middle of the night. The air inside was hot, but outside it was boiling, like you'd expect something different in Midland at the end of July. I went to my room and lounged on the bed, and I dreamed. I didn't really like them. When I woke up, it was 4:30 a.m. I found myself muttering the phrase, understanding is forgiveness. In the heavy darkness of that pre-dawn hour, I wondered if the cliché was true. If I understand, will I forgive? What will this forgiveness look like? I swore I wouldn't read her diaries, but now I wanted to find answers. Originally, I was only going to read what she might have written about cheating. The problem was that she almost never indicated the year and only rarely the month. She used the day of the week instead. It immediately became clear that she did not write for anyone to read it. She did not even write for herself. It was her way of understanding the events in her life. Once I started reading, I couldn't stop. It was the essence of a woman that I loved more than I thought a man could love a woman. I may have hated what she did. I really hated what she did, but this was the soul of a being that I would fight 100 dragons to protect. I took one of the books, opened it, and began to read. It's done. The cavalry didn't come to the hill. The good guys didn't arrive on time. Matt didn't stop the wedding. As I stood at the altar, my daughters cried in their little bridesmaid dresses. As I stood at the altar, my daughters were crying in their little bridesmaid dresses. The words, "If anyone has any objections," were said, and Matt didn't rush into the church to save me. I said the words, and this time I won't break them. What a stupid fantasy. I didn't even know I was hoping to be rescued until this morning, so why should anyone else know? Now I am truly doomed, in every sense of the word. I think it started to dawn on me around sunrise. There was really no reason to think that James would make love to me on our wedding night. He'd never done that before. At least he had finally stopped taunting Matt during sex. I hated it, and last night I told him that if he didn't stop, I would start talking about how much I loved Matt's big equipment. I wish I had said it the first time. When he finally got tired and started snoring, I ran to the bathroom and cried for over an hour. Now James is playing golf. What kind of man golfs alone on his honeymoon? The one that wants me to say, "Make love to me, James." He doesn't want a pet name or term of endearment, just that very formal James. I swear I'll never say that again. Oh, Matt, why did you force me to marry him? But I know why, don't I? I saw your face that Friday night, and a big part of me died. However, I continued to hope and pray that you would change your mind about this marriage to which I am now condemned. Would it make a difference if I could explain it to you? But how could I explain something that I myself don't understand? How could I resist all his ambiguous hints that my job depended on me making him happy, and then obediently obey when he ordered me to have a drink in his apartment? Why did I try so hard to hide what was happening from Matt? He would have put an end to this. He would have saved me. But then, over the last month, I wasn't sure I wanted to be saved, right? Did I really start to love James, or did I convince myself that I did in order to justify what I was doing to the person I really loved? Well, if I really thought I loved him, he's killed it in the last 2 months by constantly bragging about how he won me from a young guy, parading me like a stupid trophy. Oh God, that's who I am. I'm his 28-year-old trophy wife. His way of feeling young as he approaches 50. Oh God, what have I done? Who can save me now? As I continued reading, some things gradually became clear. First of all, Judy was a submissive person. She was not a masochist, but she was inclined to submit to the will of those whom she perceived as having power over her. She saw Capote as such a person, and he seemed to understand how to take advantage of it. Secondly, I didn't realize how deep her pain was that we didn't have other children. She was afraid that I was just using my business as an excuse. She was afraid that I had finally given up when we stopped fertility treatments. She was crushed and full of resentment. I didn't realize how important it was to her. I think her depression made her even more vulnerable to a man like Capote. This did not relieve her of responsibility for treason. She still made the choice to submit to Capote. Her diary clearly showed that she understood what she was getting into when she undressed and spread her legs for him. She was guilty as sin, and she knew it. I don't think she ever understood why she did it, but in almost every entry she bemoaned her weakness. There were other surprises, too. She realized that I was trying to punish her by forcing her to marry Capote right after I first caught him cheating. She thought about it and decided that she deserved to be punished. Instead of complaining, she wrote pages about the pain. Not about her, but about a new and deep understanding of how she hurt me. After the first time, she didn't write much about it. She wasn't happy with that. She was worried that he might bring home some disease, but she didn't really care who he slept with. Then I found the part where her story got ugly. It broke my heart to see the simple, straightforward words she used to describe his abuse. Put too much sugar in his coffee, a big blow to the stomach. I bruised my hip when I fell on the floor. This happened within 3 months of their wedding. She never made a big deal out of it. She accepted his beatings as a deserved punishment for what she did to me. What really broke her heart was every time she thought that I might be sleeping with someone. She wrote pages expressing her emotions and lamenting the first time she was sure I had sex with another woman. She was actually wrong about that woman. We didn't have sex, but I had already had sex with another woman before that time. My last love affair, coupled with the beatings and pressure from Capote, almost drove her to suicide. The pressure from Capote was two-pronged. He wanted her to go to a fertility clinic. His parents were willing to foot the bill. She used all kinds of excuses for both of them, but in reality she didn't want his child and didn't want to do anything sexual with him that she didn't do with her husband. That's what she called me all the time. 2 years after the divorce, she still rarely called me. She never called Capote that. When I closed the last diary, I was exhausted, so I went back to bed and slept. One good thing about owning your own design company is that you can be as eccentric with your hours as you wish. I had standing orders that no one would call my home unless there was a building collapse. No one called for the next 2 days while I brooded. By the end of this time, I was still not sure. James Capote was in a world of pain. He just didn't know it. I didn't know how I would deal with him. The only question was whether he would survive. I seriously thought about contacting some people I knew who were involved in illegal construction projects. I didn't allow them on my construction sites, but even bandits love good houses. My fee for designing the house was now in the 7 figures, which was a bargain considering how much some of them were selling for. A botched robbery. However, Capote was a problem that could wait. What couldn't wait was Judy. She would be leaving the hospital soon, and although I didn't know what I wanted from or for her, I knew I didn't want her to go back to their home. Even if I didn't care, the thought of twins in the same house as Capote terrified me. At least that's what I tried to convince myself of. But every time I thought about the action, I had an image of Judy as she was undressing, or a memory of my dream of that Friday night when they made love. Only now I added Capote mocking my shortcomings as a lover. Arguments were swirling around in my head. For every reason to be merciful, I could find an equally good reason why I shouldn't. As they went on and on in my head, I turned on the news on TV to distract myself. The speaker was talking about a new horror committed by someone in the Middle East. I clenched my teeth and lowered my head. Early in the morning on the third day, determined but still not entirely sure of my decision, I headed to the hospital. When I approached her room, she was still sleeping. I stood next to her bed and looked at her face. It was covered in ugly purple bruises that were now turning into that horrible shade of green and brown. I've never seen anyone get beaten so badly. As I leaned over her bed to see the other side of her face, I didn't notice that I was crying. I will never know what woke her up, my tear falling on her face or my muffled sob. Her eyes opened and she smiled at me for a second. Then, realizing where she was, she quietly screamed and covered herself with the blanket. "Judy, we need to talk. I saw everything, and it will be easier for both of us if we don't talk through the sheet." She made a sound that sounded like a chuckle or a grunt, but lowered the sheet. Although she smiled, that smile did not reach her eyes. "Dad told me that he gave you my diaries. He had no right to do this, and I'm sorry he did it." I was pretty angry, but then I realized that I never wanted to hide anything from you. If you had asked, I would have given them to you. I don't remember exactly what I wrote there, but I would appreciate it if you would put them in order before you let the girls read them. I chuckled. "I can't let them see what you thought about our years of dating." I looked into her eyes, and they were so wide open that I felt like I was looking into her soul. It was her whole soul. I always loved looking at her naked body. The images of her showing him to Capote were my worst nightmare, even worse than imagining him having her. But what she was letting me see now was too revealing, too much. No one should have to be that vulnerable in front of another person. In a very soft voice, she almost whispered, "I would like to explain why I did this. I did not want this. I really didn't want to, but I did it. I don't blame you for the divorce or for forcing me to marry James. This is what I deserve, but I want you to know that I am ready to do anything to cause you less pain." She stopped to blow her nose, which turned into a grunt, looked embarrassed, and continued, "I can't even say I didn't realize how much it would hurt you when you caught me. I thought it would happen right after the first time. As this continued, I didn't know what to think. I've never loved you less, but I think I wanted you to save me, and as weird as it may sound, I think I was upset that you didn't. I always wanted to ask, did you not suspect until that night? I clenched my teeth. No, I didn't suspect it. My trust in you was absolute. If you told me the sun rises in the west, I would call the McDonald Observatory in the Davis Mountains and ask why, and then argue with them if they tried to deny it. She took a deep breath, held it, then slowly exhaled. I never belonged on a pedestal like that. I couldn't live like that. She paused then, as was her way, changed the subject. Where do we go from here? I smiled slightly, knowing how such sudden changes in the course of conversation affected me. I loved her mental flexibility, but I hated having to tag along. First of all, you don't come back to his house anymore. Never, that's final. She tilted her head and looked at me like a teacher would at a particularly slow student. That's not an option. I married him, for better or worse. It just turned out to be a lot worse than I had planned. I felt anger boiling inside me. Judy, that's not an option. Just imagine that I'm on a white horse and I'm here to save you. I'm telling you that you are not coming back. For the first time, I saw confusion in her eyes. You read this in my diary, didn't you? I swore that I would never break my marriage vows again. You should know that too. I interrupted her. He has broken all the vows of this marriage. He cheated on you, and he didn't love or care about you. He killed this marriage, not you. You don't owe him. She blinked a few times, and I saw hesitation. If you ever go back to him, I will never let you see girls again. I can't risk their safety either. She broke down and buried her face in her hands, sobbing. I sat on the bed and hugged her. When she realized what I was doing, she clung to me and wet my shirt with her tears. When she cried, she said, "Where will I go? What will I do? I will help you, and I will make sure that he cannot hurt you. I will have my lawyer prepare the divorce papers and restraining orders. If I bring them to you this afternoon, will you sign them?" Without looking at me, Judy nodded into my chest. That afternoon, my lawyer and his 2 secretaries came to Judy's room. She signed the documents, and the secretaries acted as witnesses. When everything was done, he left to take them to court before it closed, leaving me alone with Judy. She took my hand and pressed it to her cheek, still wet from tears. Then, with a sparkle in her eyes, she asked, "When this is all over, will you take me back?" This is the question I was afraid of. I remembered my epiphany while listening to the news on TV. War, by its nature, is cruel and inhumane. But unless it's a war where you take no prisoners, a war where every man, woman, and child of the enemy is destroyed, you have to leave room for peace. Without mercy, wars can last for thousands of years. You must show mercy to your enemy. Otherwise, you're just a savage. Mercy does not mean surrender. It simply means that you retain some of your humanity and allow the enemy to retain his. It was time to show mercy to Judy. I did my best. 5 years later, I was sitting in the waiting room on the maternity ward floor. Judy was being moved from delivery room to delivery room by another set of twins, this time boys. A nervous father awaiting his first child sat next to me, and we were talking when the nurse announced that Judy was ready. Mark stood up, shook my hand, and said, "Thanks for coming. It's going to be a tough couple of months, isn't it?" I smiled. "Yes, and the girls go crazy. I will try to keep them as much as possible, but my hands will be full too." He nodded nervously and went to join Judy as she gave birth. Mark is a good guy, a major in the Army Reserves and a captain in the Midland Fire Department. He earned a Silver Star in Afghanistan and received a second Purple Star in Iraq. I respect him. He was a good match for Judy, and I was glad that they found each other. So what about me? How did I answer Judy's question 5 years ago? I tried to show my mercy. "No, Judy, I won't take you back." Her face darkened and tears began to fall again. When she finally pulled herself together, she was able to meet my gaze and asked, "Why?" I really wanted to say, "Because I want a wife that I can put on a pedestal, not one that I have to keep on a tight leash to keep her faithful. But I did not say this. The rain of Shakespeare's mercy poured down and drowned my poison. Okay, I said it, but I tried to say it kindly. I understand us better now than when we were married. We're just not right for each other. That doesn't make us bad people, but you need someone to guide you, and that's not me. I'm too caught up in myself. I will always have a special place in my heart for the woman who gave me twins. No, that's not true either. You will always be my first love, but we're just not right for each other. We both made bad choices, but maybe together, friends, we can help each other do better. Mark was the right man for Judy. He didn't keep her on a leash, but rather on a safety line, like a climbing team. They were right for each other, and Judy, secure in her affection, blossomed in a way she had never blossomed while we were married. Mark and Judy lived in the same school zone as me. The twins would ride their bikes back and forth between our houses. We didn't communicate, but we supported each other. If we disagreed on an issue, we went to the captain for arbitration, and the girls never knew we had a disagreement. The twins jokingly complained that they had too many parents. But despite all their complaints, they loved Mark, and he loved them. They were delighted with the appearance of new brothers. Many new brothers. You see, I wasn't at the hospital to support Mark or Judy. We weren't that close. It was one of those weird life tricks. I was there to see my wife and our newborn twins who were born a day early. Did you live happily afterwards? Maybe. Mercy doesn't mean you have to let someone else get away with it, just a little less than they deserve. This meant that I didn't have to punish Judy to the extent that I could. Taking her back wouldn't be mercy, it would be something else. I met my wife through my friend Judy, and we were every couple's dream. I hold her on a special pedestal, and she keeps my excessive ego in check. She loves my girls, and they love her. If Judy hadn't cheated, we'd still be married. It would be better for the twins, but not for me. Perhaps we got married too young. Perhaps we saw each other as acceptable companions and did not expect perfection. Maybe we weren't done growing up, and we both changed when we did. All I know for sure is that I could never be as happy with Judy as I am now with my wife. Showing mercy to Capote was more difficult. There was a point when I decided that working for almost minimum wage for a man like him was enough. He was a broken man. I shouldn't have broken his body either. Okay, maybe the time in prison for assault also played a role. However, about a year ago, I had a reason to contact him. One very foolish woman, despite warnings, simply had to open her heart to this good man. I will never understand why some people are such fools. When I heard about his wedding, my heart was so full of mercy for this stupid woman that I shared my burden with the client. It so happened that my client's friend's cousin was in the high-risk personal loans business. When this cousin learned of the situation, he was so full of human kindness that he sent one of his business partners to Capote to gently explain that good boys don't hit girls. I heard that the lesson did not have to be repeated. It's good to have friends in low places. Yes, I am the first to admit that I still have a lot to learn and a long way to go before anyone considers me merciful. But here's what I've learned about not giving mercy. It keeps you tied to the person or the issue. It is also an insult to your better nature. I couldn't forgive myself for what I did to Judy, but when I showed her mercy, I was able to show it to myself. It broke the steel shell I had built around my heart and opened it up to the possibility of a happy ending. Subscribe to our channel so that your love doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think click to the next one.